Hey guys, so this is part 2 of a 2-part video. On the last video I showed you guys how to use SaltWash and Iron Orchid Design air dry clay to create a board like this one, and today we're going to go over how to paint that board to finalize it and make it a beautiful piece. And so let's get started. Hi, my name is Royce Hunt Bell, owner and operator of Roycycled Treasures. I'm excited to see how this comes out, you guys, because I don't have a clear plan, but we'll see what happens. I'll be using a couple of things today, not as much as yesterday. We'll be sealing this piece with Wise Owl's matte varnish, and I'll also be using Wise Owl's paint in several colors. I'm going to use goldenrod. It's a really pretty yellow. I'll be using Madrid, which is like a poppy red. It's really pretty, and I want to use some copper paint to gild our piece. And we'll be using some Wise Owl's Glaze. If you guys have watched me for any amount of time, you probably already know it's going to be half Java and half black walnut. Is my favorite combination for the perfect glaze for all of my projects. I'm also going to be using dollar store foam brushes. I want to tell you guys something that I think is hilarious. Packaging or branding is always linked to what's being branded. It's kind of like when you go buy the pink razor, and the pink razor is $1 more than the men's razor, even though it's the exact same thing. So if you go to the craft section to buy these, you get 6 for $1. But if you go around by the tools and like the electric tape and all that, you get 8 for the same dollar. Just saying. Look on the tool aisle, not the craft aisle for your foam brushes. So I want to use this wide brush, and I'll show you guys why. We're going to start off by sealing this piece, but I don't want to seal the whole thing. I just want to seal all of the high points, and I'll show you guys why in just a minute. So I'm going to pour some varnish in one of my Dollar Tree bowls. You guys get 12 of these for $1 at Dollar Tree. I love them. And so I'm going to use my foam, and I'm barely going to go over the top, you guys. Just barely, barely, barely. I really don't want my sealer to drop into the details of the flower. I only want to seal the highest points of this project. So I'm putting very little product on my foam brush. And so really light touch, you guys. Really light touch. Because if you put too much, it'll puddle into your details and you won't get the same effect that I'm looking for here. So in essence, what I'm doing is creating a bit of a resist so that when I glaze this piece, the high points will not glaze really darkly, but all of the details will. So that's what we're looking for. And so you can look at this, and because you guys are with me on the last portion of the tutorial, you know that there are a lot of details, but you really can't see them yet. So we're gonna make them pop. So again, I'm loading my foam, but then I'm scraping a lot of it off, and I'm just going right over the top of my details with the matte varnish. I really, really, really don't want to get any into the crevices or any of the details of this piece. And I have a leaf here and a leaf here that I've stamped. I'm going to do the same thing with those leaves. I'm just going to go over the top. I'm actually going to do the same thing over the entirety of the board, even over the textured portion. The one thing about spreading your SaltWash on super thick is that when it dries, you get these really yummy cracks. And so I want to make sure and highlight those cracks. So I don't want sealer to go down into those cracks. So I'm only going to seal the high portions of my project. And you can really control what's emphasized by doing this. For instance, if I wanted the perimeter of the flower to be darker, then I could be really cognizant and not put a lot of sealer there either, so that when I glaze it, those areas will be darker than the rest, and that's a nice way to highlight your design. So now that I've gotten all of the surface of this sealed, remember just the high points, I didn't want to have my sealer go into any of the details. I'm going to hit this with my craft dryer and make sure that it's really dry. For this portion, we'll be using Wise Owl's Glaze. And so glaze can be used for several reasons. You can use glaze to warm a color. You can use it to deepen a color. A lot of times if you're using different colors on the same piece, you can use glaze over the whole thing. It'll unify all of the colors. But for today's project, we're using glaze to highlight our details. And the way that we're going to highlight the details are actually going to be to deepen the recesses. So we're going to take our glaze and we're going to apply it. After I find the brush I want to use, we're going to apply it, and we're going to apply a lot of glaze, you guys. I mean, and it looks scary, doesn't it? You guys are like, what is she doing? No! But I really want to push that glaze down into all of those recesses. Because once I push them down in there, I'm going to wipe over the top of this. And that's going to pull any glaze off of the high points. And so what we end up with is a really, really detailed version of our project. And I'm making sure that I get glaze all over this area because it is going to change the tone of my back, of the base of my board, so I want that to be very consistent. So now that I have that all on there, I'm just going to run my towel over, and it's going to pull all the glaze off of the high points where it was sealed, and the area where it wasn't sealed is where that glaze is going to sit. I just love watching these reveals because while it was white, you really couldn't see the detail. But now that we've glazed the recesses, those details really begin to pop. I'm gonna wet my towel a little bit because I really want to pull more glaze off of those high points so that when we go in with our paint, that they're not muddied. And look at that, you guys. Isn't that gorgeous? Now you can see all the beautiful details that you worked hard to create. And I'm just pulling that glaze back because I really want that flower to pop off of the board. And you guys will notice I only did half of my board, right? Because I don't want to let the glaze sit too long because I don't want it to stick to places I don't want it to stick. So in order to control that, I put it on fairly quickly and take it off quickly. And I think that that is going to be so pretty. And so now we're going to do our other side. So I'm wiping off the extra glaze. And then I'm going to wet my towel and go back in and lift even more glaze off of that flower. Doesn't she just come to life, you guys? I love it. And just as a side note, I let this sit overnight. I really want my SaltWash and my clay to be completely dry before I start this process. Because you're manipulating it a lot, and if your clay is damp, you could, you know, reshape your clay, or it'll hold onto the glaze more than you want. So you really want your surfaces to be dry. And I'm actually going to go over my background a little bit, and even pulling back, the glaze creates even more texture on your background, which I'm kind of digging that. There we go. I'm almost tempted just to leave it like this, but I think we'll add a little bit of color. So you guys know my palettes are paper plates. I'm not fancy, but I'm going to put a couple of colors on my paper plate. I'm going to use Wise Owl's Goldenrod is one of mine. A lot of people ask me about the bottles that I hold my paint in. These are FIFO bottles. It's FIFO. It's first in, first out. In the restaurant industry, they use them to hold like ketchup and salad dressing and sauces. And it makes it easy for portion control, which is why I like it for painting, because often when I open a paint bottle or a paint can, you know, you have paint around the rim and you can't get the top on it right and you end up losing paint. So this way I'm able to only use or only squirt out exactly what I'm going to use, and I'm less likely to waste paint. So I'm going to finger paint, you guys. I'm not going to use a brush. I might. Let's start with the first base. I'll start my base off with a brush, but I know I'm going to end up finger painting. I'm using watercolor brushes for this. I like them because the bristles are super, super soft, and I just prefer them. So that's what I'm using. I'm going to put a base of the goldenrod first, and this is really just serving as like a base color. This is easy to paint because the high portions of the flower are so much higher than the recessed that you're almost just, you can lay your paintbrush down. You don't have to be super concise, or super precise, I should say. And so I'm just gonna lay the goldenrod down as a base color on my flower. My other flower is orange. You guys see the color right here? Up here, it's kind of like a burnt orange. So I kind of want the colors to speak to each other. They'll be tertiary, meaning they're on the same side of the color wheel. And so that's what I want, but they're not going to be the same. So each will be a little different. Isn't that awesome? Like, seriously, you guys see how haphazard I'm being. But because the high points are so high, they're the ones that are picking up the color. And I'm being nice because you guys are watching, because if I was here alone, I'd be using my fingers. Which I may ultimately do when we get ready to go in with the metallics. There is just something about being able to touch my pieces that just brings me more satisfaction. I'm gonna use my finger, you guys. This is driving me crazy. I just put a little bit on my finger and then I can just rub it on there. It's the same premise. If I needed to be more precise, I would use a brush, which I will later when I go in to add more colors. And don't try to put too much paint on at one time. It's better to do several light layers than to get too much paint and get them into your details. Because when you go over with the second layer, it becomes a lot more opaque than the first. And now I'm going to use my brush, you guys, to go in with my next color. And this one I want to, because I really want to control like where I'm putting this. And so I'm going to offload on my plate, and basically I'm going to dry brush the other colors in there. And so I'm just going in the bottom of these petals and just kind of rubbing that really warm color in there. I think the dry brushing brings like a really pretty element to this. I could get lost doing this. This is like adult coloring right here. I could completely get lost. And this middle part right here, I think I'm gonna mix together my orange and yellow to create a third color. And I'm going to use that color. Let me offload that a little bit more because I really do want to just dry brush the inner parts of the flower. And just making these subtle differences in tones really does give your project, it makes it a lot more dynamic. Now, I have green here. Let me see. I have some Botanical by Wise Owl. So now I'm introducing 3 colors. I'm I'm probably going to drag a little bit of the orange and a little bit of the yellow and the green to make a third color, because I want to make sure that my composition looks like cohesive. And one of the ways that you can do that is you can create like a third color, and you just mix that third color up with all your other colors, and it makes everything make sense like magically. So I'm going to mix, you know, the orange, the yellow, and the green, and I'm going to make this weird third color that doesn't have to be pretty or even make sense, because you're only going to mix a little of it with your other colors. But so I'm going to take this brush, I'm going to pull a little bit of that green in, and I'm going to mix those together to make this third color. And you see how like tonally it just kind of changes that green, and that green is going to make more sense with the other two colors because you've mixed all the colors, you've used that third color, and so it's not going to feel like weird or shocking against those other colors because those colors are in this color. Now the final step to this for me, you can keep going. I mean, like I honestly could keep going on this forever. I have to tell myself to stop. But my final thing that I want to do on this is add some metallic because I love it. So I have some Wise Owl's copper paint here, and I'm going to do the same thing with my finger painting, and I'm just kind of going to go over it and just add that metallic in there, and I just think it makes it so special. And it's not super obvious, you know, so it doesn't look garish. It just adds some highlights and some variation. And that is how I painted my textured piece after I made my medallions and my SaltWash base. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. This is thoroughly fun for me. I'm probably going to fiddle with this for a little bit just because I'm having fun and I don't want to stop. But I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Please look below for a list of supplies and websites where you can buy the supplies. If you like this tutorial, please click and subscribe. If you click the bell, you'll get notification. We'll be uploading videos every week of new tutorials. And if you give me a thumbs up, you guys, it will help me out a lot and I really appreciate it. Thank you again. From Roycycled Treasures, you guys have a blessed day. Bye.